Hello and welcome back to the Sell Like You podcast. And Jordan is back on the mic with me, and we are going to take you behind the scenes for our sales and marketing as a service, which we've been doing over the past year or so. We've also done some workshops, which we've talked about in the podcast before, but we're going to lift the hood and share a little bit around the process and why we do it and what we've been doing in the market for the last few months. Jordan, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Always welcome here on the podcast. So we've been doing what we call the full funnel formula, which is like a bit of a mouthful when you actually have to say it. And especially the speed that I talk, it's always like f. So the full funnel formula, tell us about it. I'll let you kick us off. You tell us about it.
It's like triple F or something. Yes. So full funnel formula. And this actually started because of the workshops that we put together last year. And so if you missed it, we did some clicks to clients workshop. We come up with really good names, apparently. And we came up with this workshop because we had worked together a lot, and we were always talking about how, sales needs to work with marketing, and you kind of can't have one without the other. And so that led us to the workshop where we were teaching people, hey, here's how to kind of build your own funnel and get your leads coming in and convert the leads. And after we taught the workshop, we were like, this makes sense to be a service. We could do this really well, and we could come up with a formula that we can just repeat over and over and over again, that's proven to work and that's reliable and scalable. So the full funnel formula was, basically our answer to a sales and marketing offering as a service. So how do we generate leads for people? How do we make sure they're the right leads? How do we then take those leads and pass them over to all the amazing work that Harriet does and nurture them and get them to a point that they are actually ready to, book in a meeting or get a demo or buy something. So full funnel formula is basically starting from A and getting you all the way through to Z. There's not that many steps, but A to Z.
There are definitely not that many steps. Yeah, and yes, definitely well done on the naming. That's all you. You have to full credit over there. And I think the interesting thing when we did the workshop was that was done because we were like, let's educate people, and it was more so from like, I would probably say it was like 70 to 80% marketing, like as in the actual campaign. Within that, we went into messaging and core language, which was, leaning on the sales side of things. Then we were running the campaign. So everyone knew how to set up a campaign for LinkedIn, set up a campaign for Meta, execute it, and then follow it up, and then utilize, a phone call, which interestingly, I reckon like 10%, if max, did that with the phone call piece. They were definitely keen on the email bit. But that was for us because I think you and I have both always been this like lift the hood, share all the secrets. There's nothing we're hiding here. Like, let's give it all away. Whereas interestingly, I think from what we've seen in the market, I would say across the globe, not just here in Australia, has been like, come in, we're not going to tell you the how, we're not going to tell you the why, but we're going to just do it. And you have to be okay with that, because then we have these horror stories, and we won't go into too much of that, but around, reporting and then not seeing visibility, but then not seeing results, and then not being able to explain why. Whereas I think we just want to be like black, white, this is what you have to do. This is what works. This is what doesn't. And then in the workshops, I remember we had one of the guys and he wanted to do something different to what we'd recommended. We were like, you can, probably won't work. And then it didn't work. And then he came back and was like, okay, we're going to do it your way now. And so it's giving people that permission to try. And then, as you said, then this service was then, because after that, everyone's like, awesome, that's great. Can you do it for me? And then it's like, we can, but then how much of that are we doing? And are you thinking about both sides of the coin? And so the 3Fs, the FFFs, was definitely a great idea. And I remember the first client we really designed it around. And that's what I love about sales, like, and being able to sell, is that I often sell stuff that we haven't even created yet, sales clients, that we then go away and create. Full disclosure, we always tell them that this is the first go. But I think then it's interesting because we then go, well, here's a niche or here's an opportunity. Let's just find someone that's game enough, and we're going to back ourselves by guaranteeing the leads. And I remember that first one where we guaranteed the leads, and I was blown away by the fact that we could actually do it. And I know you were super excited about it. Like, why was that such a big thing for you, do you think?
For me, it just, no one does it. Like, no one guarantees anything. And like I said, I never want to kind of dive into too many horror stories, but so many people come to me, and I'm sure you as well, and they're like, oh, I've been spending thousands of dollars a month with this agency, and like, we haven't gotten anything, or we spent $10,000 on ads in the last 3 months and we've got one lead. And because there's no guarantee, And I'm not saying they're not doing the right things or anything like that, but it's kind of like, oh, well, the learning is it didn't work. And that's, as a business owner, whether you're small or big, like that's a horrible situation to be in, investing all that money and not getting results. And I just had not seen anyone in market being like, we're going to do this and we're going to guarantee you that lead number. And if we don't hit it, well, then that's fine. We'll spend more to hit it, or, we'll figure something out. I think we also gave a clause, like a 1 month into the 3 month kind of project clause. They look, if we haven't hit those targets, we'll give you a way out. Like, it was very much, we back ourselves so much that we're going to put ourselves here and honestly put ourselves in a potentially risky situation to do this. But I just, hadn't seen anyone do it before. And that's what I've always wanted to do, is be able to guarantee things. Unfortunately, so much stuff in the marketing world is very tricky to guarantee because there's so many different variables. But this particular formula we came up with was kind of almost like the only variables really are things that we actually are controlling. There's maybe 1 or 2 variables, but we know what we're doing and we know it works. So we're confident enough in it.
And like you said, the guarantee piece is so interesting, especially also in sales, because they're like, oh, will you guarantee your sales? I'm like, well, it's hard. You can't guarantee, you actually can't guarantee sales because I don't know how good your product is, but I can guarantee conversations. I can guarantee the fact that we'll call that many people. I can guarantee that we will, so there's a lot of guarantees you can give to a point. And then from that point, it's like, well, we can get the leads in, we can have the conversations. If they convert, that's down to your sales process once we've handed over the meeting or the lead or the opportunity. And then once it's in there and I get asked around the other side when I train their team, well, will you guarantee outcomes? And a few people have said to me, why don't you go in, because everyone we work with sees success, why don't you do it and take a percentage of that success? But then there's so many variables in that side of it where I'm like, if somebody doesn't do the right job, if somebody doesn't follow up when they're meant to, like, I can't micromanage that bit. So I can guarantee they'll come in and they're ready to have a conversation. I'll guarantee that your team will be more confident. They'll have the capability. But in terms of will they actually do the thing, that's the bit we can't. And I think that's the thing with this service, is that you and I are the ones running it, through our businesses, is how we're actually going to execute on it. And also, I think the one thing we talked about was that if we weren't able to hit, because obviously, again, marketing has got so many variables of how much it's going to cost as well to achieve that. And that's what you and I were working out. But we've also got the ability to pick up the phone and get some extra leads as well if we needed to do it that way. So we've got I think that's why the teamwork piece works really well, for us. And I was really excited when we first put that, guaranteed leads on that proposal, being like, yes, like we are the first out there doing it and we're excited to do it. The second bit in there was that we also didn't disclose the value of the media spend. And that's also been an education around businesses that are like, well, how much are you spending? And how much of that is that media spend? Well, do you want to care about the spend, or do you want to care about the outcome? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and this is, I think, just almost like trained behavior over the years. Like, we're so used to it being like, this is the agency fee and then this is the media spend, and they are separate figures. And when that happens, it's not that there's outcomes. It's like, that the outcome of the agency fee is the hours that the agency is going to work on it. And then the media spend outcome is, well, dependent. Could be bad, could be good, but we don't know. So it was like, there's actually not a pro to that approach if you don't have a guaranteed outcome. So if we can take that away and say, well, look, this is the total figure and this is the guaranteed outcome, whether that split is 40-60, 80-20, 90-10, if you get the outcome you want and we get those quality leads, it's actually a better outcome than splitting it out and doing it that way. And again, like, the risk is on us. And we talked about this when we first kind of were trying to figure out what the best way to do it was kind of, it's almost the same as, I guess, having a percentage cut if it goes well, like a commission base. It's like, if we can get those leads and this is a super slick campaign and we've nailed it, then those leads might be a cheaper cost per lead. And that's awesome for us. That means we get a reward for putting something amazing together. If we haven't quite nailed it and maybe the ads aren't performing as well as we like, then that's then on us. And the commission, I guess, we're going to get is going to be a lot less. And it could potentially, if you're guaranteeing leads, get to a point where you barely cover the time that you've done. I think it's important, and it is an education piece of, like, the risk, while it sounds like, oh, we're not going to tell you the split, the risk actually sits with us as to where that split falls. And at the end of the day, wherever that split falls, you get the outcome. So That's, I
Yeah.
guess, where our
And
thinking was.
I think because one of those conversations, we talked around like a spend around, I think it was like $5,000, and we gave it, because we're not afraid to share that information. We're like, look, it's about $5,000, but if we can get it for 4,000, then we're doing a really good job, and it's because of the expertise. But if it costs us 6,000 or 7,000, that's also on us. And so it's also then interesting because we've had a couple where they've preferred to know and don't get, there's no, so therefore we remove the guarantee and we say, look, we'll just do what we can for this. And then also it's about us knowing the industry and then how that's going to show up, because we've had, examples where we've gone in with a budget in mind, and then after the first 3 weeks we're like, it's not going to work. So we change tack, we change strategy, we change focus. And that then kind of, I guess, feeds back into the marketer's spiel of like, we can't guarantee anything. And therefore, if you get one lead, you get one lead. But then we're also not prepared to stop at one lead. Like, that's not good enough. And I remember I had a client, they weren't in this formula, but I was doing some coaching and support with them, and they were working with an agency and they got one lead. I was like, you just got no words, because how have you just got one lead and you're spending, well, I can't remember how much it was. It was a lot of money. And, it's brand and website and this and that. And like, but if you're getting that's a journey to be prepared for that. And that's not my expertise, that's yours, but that's a journey. But then if you're doing demand generation through ads, why isn't that working? And I think then that feeds back into why we did this.
Yeah, I think and again, I'm always cautious to talk without knowing full context of what they're trying and what they're doing and everything. But I think, that's like one of my pet hates in the industry, and why I work the way I work is where people run a campaign, they set it up, it's not working, but it just keeps running for the month. And then the month report comes and the results are not that great. And it's like, yeah, unfortunately, the result, the campaign didn't go as well as we'd hoped. Here's a couple of reasons why we think it might be. See you next month. And it just continues on. And I just don't understand how, and I know, like, very fortunate to be, a lot of the time just working myself. And so probably can be a lot more nimble and able to change things than a larger agency can. But I think that's the difference. I know we've got one client at the moment in the program, and the kind of typical formula that they're very niche and their audience is quite tech savvy. And so the idea of putting in emails and names and stuff like that is, just an absolute no-go for that audience. So we're having to work a lot harder. And I think it's about 2 weeks into the campaign, we're like, do you know what? The typical way is not going to deliver the results we want. We were getting leads in, but they were more expensive than we wanted to pay. We said, okay, what can we do? And we've got a plan B. And then if plan B doesn't work, we've got a plan C, and we're trying other things, and we're bringing in Google, and we're just trying all these different things, because we could keep going and we can say, oh, you know what? Unfortunately, leads are just more expensive than we thought. And so you'll just get less. But that's not how we want that to go.
We're not okay with that. That's not that's not an okay response for us, is it?
Yeah.
So talk me through, like, let's share a bit around like the process. So we get a client, we get them on a call. Once they've started, we do their kickoff. What does it look like for you? Like, what are you looking for? What are you capturing?
Yes. So for me, and obviously I'm kind of part one, and then Harriet's part two. So I'm getting the leads and Harriet's then working with those leads. So for me, what I'm trying to understand is like what a qualified lead looks like, who that lead actually is, who you want to talk to. And then what are their challenges? What are their pain points? What are they struggling with day to day? For part one, when we talk about lead generation, what we found is, if you just say, hey, click here to book in a Times chat to us, or hey, click here for more information, there's a form and there's no value, people are more savvy than ever. It's just not working. So you have to give them something of value. So my job is to figure out, like, what is that piece of value that's going to get someone to go, wow, that's really cool. I'm going to give my name and email in exchange for that piece of value. So yeah, from my point of view, first thing is just really understanding the client, their customer, and what value looks like to their customer. It doesn't have to be fully related to the service or product offering. As one example, one previous client was kind of a SaaS product offering all these different features, but we could offer things like a template for a shareholder update, because their customers were, founders and directors and CEOs, and that would be a really helpful thing for them.
One of the things I remember you pointed out when we were setting up and creating the lead magnets was that you said around having something that can't be Googled, or ChatGPT can't create it. What's been the shift? 2 years ago, that wouldn't have been necessarily as big a deal. So what shifted and why is that so important?
Yeah, I think, especially not just Google, but ChatGPT, obviously coming and making our lives much easier, to be honest, but also much harder at the same time. So 2 years ago, you could put something out, like as an example, download our free social media template, and you get a whole heap of downloads, you get a whole heap of leads. They'd be quite cheap. Nowadays, if someone needs a social media strategy template, they'll probably just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, make me a social media strategy. Give me a template, I'll fill it out. And so that all of a sudden the perceived value is nil, like barely anything, maybe the $20 a month ChatGPT subscription at most. So now what we're seeing a shift in is, okay, what's something that like ChatGPT can't give you and Google can't give you? Sometimes templates can work really well if you can kind of give your knowledge and how that helps. So as an example, like the shareholder update, rather than just saying, oh, it's a shareholder update with dot points, it's a shareholder update with pointers and information and ways we know that your shareholders are going to really engage and love that information. So it's not just the shareholder update, it's the extra knowledge that you can't get from ChatGPT. Even like opinion pieces work really well now because, again, like ChatGPT, it can give you an opinion, but it can't give you that kind of knowledge-based opinion that comes from a point of authority. So I think that's probably just the biggest change, is just there's easy ways to get late and structures and, step-by-step processes now. So you have to think a little bit outside the box.
And when you do that, like, can you tell the difference, like in terms of leads that are generated?
Yeah, I think what you'll find is almost just no leads will come through those really basic templates. I would say, anytime you run a campaign, typically what I tried to do is come up with at least 4 lead magnets. And what we normally try to do is come up with kind of one of each. So we come up with one that's like a step-by-step guide, one that's a template, one that is, the ultimate playbook or insider guide or something like that. And then something that's a bit of a wild card. Now, again, all of these are not just like, here's a template. It's a template with additional insights and kind of like, why is that template something only we can provide? So we create all 4, and you can see as the campaign's going very quickly which ones are driving the leads. And I know that, like,
so
sometimes,
interesting.
yeah, it's great. We love data. But sometimes, like, I will make a lead magnet. Of course, I can only make a lead magnet as good as the information given to me. And if I know maybe the lead magnet is not as strong as the others, you will kind of know that, and straight away you will see the others getting leads and that one not getting leads. Of course, we try to make it as strong as we can, but sometimes, if we don't have the information we need, we can only do so much with what we're given as well.
And with the data point of people putting things in, obviously I'm in that industry where we look at data and how it's being managed for a lot of technologies. But then interestingly, we've never had more data at our fingertips. And I'll you're talking about different types of data there of what we get to see. That's definitely the case. But I'm thinking more of like contact data. So like names, emails, phone numbers, mobile numbers, all of that information. We've never had it before. Like, and I remember, I try and remember back and like, what was it? Like, how did we do this? And I remember I had a yellow pages and a ruler, and like I'd go down. That really shows my age, doesn't it? But like, that's how I would do outbound like 100 years ago. But then if I think of even 5 years ago, there wasn't Lucia, there wasn't Zoom Info. There weren't these things. So you were having to do, get all this data, and it was really important. And over time, the easier it's gotten to get data, I feel like the more restrictive humans have become with giving away their data. And something you mentioned there, and you say it a lot in our calls, where it's like, is this worth getting spam emails for? Like, is it worth me putting in and being emailed 7 times a week? And some people are crazy with their emails. And you and I are on the same page. I send 1 email a month, like, as an overview and an insight, and then occasionally an extra one if there's something else that people may be interested in. But I segment, and hopefully people only get things that they actually care about. But it is that piece, is that if we get through, and I've gone through stuff before where I've been like, oh, that looks interesting, click, get the form, and I start filling it out, and I'm like, oh, do I really need it? Will I read it? Are they going to email me? Is it worth it? Nah. And then you move on. So it's got to be good enough to get them in and then fill out the form, because although I don't make decisions based on how I do things, but we've got to look at the human behavior, haven't we, at the moment?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, I mean, you can even see it with the elections and everything, like just how much people are getting spammed and texted, and people are just as soon as they have to put in any identifying information, it's like a point where they just stop and go like, how do I really want this that badly? And you are like, we see it all the time. One of the best stats for us to look at is people clicking through and opening the form versus how many people complete the form. And, it's crazy. You'll have 400 people click on the ad and they go through to open the form, and then maybe only 15, 20 people fill it out. So they've seen the document or they've seen the lead magnet and they're like, oh yeah, that looks super interesting enough to click. But that kind of connection there is lost because they go, oh, actually, I have to put in my personal information, and I don't want to do that. So it's super interesting.
Yeah, and then that's when we then fight over what data I need versus what data we can get rid of, and it is interesting. And then I've got some clients that are like, yeah, sure, chuck a number in it. And I'm like, yeah, but if you ask for a phone number, you are going to deplete your numbers by definitely half, if not more, because I feel like the phone number is like the golden, like that is worth a lot of money. And then interestingly, to show, I think, just to represent how much a mobile number is worth, Lucia, which is the platform that we use to gather contact details, is they've changed their model where now it's so you now get more credits per month, but a credit so to get a mobile number is 10 credits, to get an email address is 1. So it's 10 times, it's worth 10 times more to us, which I would definitely agree with, than an email address. And now businesses that are providing these details are cracking down on that and providing that as a metric. So I think that's just to highlight how much a mobile phone number is worth. And I would definitely validate that. And then on the other side of that, and I think just a real like tiny little segue to talk about LinkedIn. Have you verified on LinkedIn? Have you done the verification?
I personally, I haven't. But just before you move on, just super quickly to give another like value,
Yes, go on. Yeah,
just of that form thing, because I think it's interesting from a dollar perspective. In the first full funnel formula project we did, we started off with less form fields, and then Harriet has requested that company be put into the form, because what was happening was people were using their like personal Gmails and things like that. So we had the name, but we couldn't actually find their contact information. And the cost per lead just by adding company to the form went from about $30-ish cost per lead to around $50. So, $20 more to get that lead just to get that extra additional bit of information.
Which
like
is
just
company, which is not
company,
a lot.
not even phone numbers. Just to give you like a dollar amount for like every little bit of extra information you want is a dollar amount. Like when we talk about value, it's not like perceived value, it is a dollar amount. It is more that you are going to have to pay.
That is a really interesting insight. I don't even know if I knew that. Like how much that changed. Like obviously you've managed that bit. So that's why you and I are in this together. You did that. So that's really interesting. And that was, and like you said, it was just company. And that was, I guess, to just highlight on there was that, for example, if we were getting generic, like pretty common names, and sorry to call names common, but like, like if I have a Sarah Smith and then we had Sarah Smith at Yahoo or Gmail, I've no idea who you are, because there's hundreds of thousands of Sarah Smith. I've got no industry context. I don't know where they've come from. And I've now got a Gmail. So the only thing we can do is email them, which goes against everything of my being of sales. So all we can do is email. But if I've then got Sarah Smith at Gmail or whatever it is, and then I've got company, then it means I could go find the company and I'll just go old school on it, Google it, get the landline and call the office. And then if I can find the company, I can connect her on LinkedIn. I can connect the dots on LinkedIn and then potentially use something else to go find the phone number. That's quite a big job though. Like that's time consuming, means money, baby. So like, how do we manage that process? So really interesting that that's gone up by $20. If we've then got to then pay to find the phone number as well, there's extra costs there. So actually getting a contact before we've done anything is actually it's really expensive, isn't it? To get there. So to go back to my mini little segue of LinkedIn, have you verified personally on LinkedIn? So I haven't. Now and you and I are big, like I love LinkedIn. It's like it's my happy place. It's where I hang out every day. But every time it pops up, I'm just like, my cybersecurity brain is like, where are you storing this data? What are you doing with it? And why would I give a social media platform more of my intel that's private, like stuff I'm not going to give away? Doesn't matter how much money you give me. I'm not going to give you my passport details. I'm not going to give you my Medicare card number. These are the things that you then ask. And so interestingly, it keeps popping up being like, you would do this if you're verified. And I had my little blip the other week about my LinkedIn, and my analytics went down. And although I harp on about don't care about the views, I was like, I've gone from like 5,000 average of, per post to 100. I think it was like 132. I think I rang you when it was on 60. I was like,
That's
help,
cool.
what's going on? Like, this is screwed. Like, I'm dead. And we were like, I logged a ticket. I thought it was shadow banned. And then Jordan was like, it might be the image. And it was a picture of me in the Maldives. Like nothing, like you could barely even work out me. I was on a hammock upside down because I'd fallen off it. Just to give a bit of context to my holiday. And in the end, I deleted it. I didn't post for a week. And I was like, I should be verified. If I was verified, this wouldn't happen. And so I went hard back into like, should I verify? But then it's like, it comes back to like, well, where is that data being stored and is it worth it? And that, I think that then the reason why I think it's so relevant is it comes back into, if we're looking at something that looks cool, if I don't know the brand or the business, do I trust it enough to put in my details? And my niche is cyber and tech and IT. So they're not, they are going to be quite savvy. And with a lot of our clients, they're in that space. So you've got to then think about the people we're engaging with. Are they the ones that are going to put names and details and numbers in, or are they not? Because then we've got to try a completely different tact altogether.
Yeah. And I think, the trust thing that you mentioned is also a big part because, we're doing this campaign in silo over here, which is lead generation. But if someone's like, okay, there's this brand and they're asking me for my data, they might go and check your socials. They might go to your website and be like, wait, who are these people? Who am I giving my data to? And if they go to your website and, it doesn't really say who you are and they're like, are these even real people? Like, have they been around for a while? They go to your LinkedIn and then you've never done a post. All of those things are barriers to stop people giving their data, I should say. So I think like, yes, we can do everything we can, but there are things that, the company can do as well to give themselves the best chance at this formula being successful.
And so once they get into that, so let's say we found these lovely people that put in their details and then we start the process, then we move into then that sequencing, which is the follow-up. So they've engaged in something and we all know, I think everyone listening and you included, Jordan, like we've all downloaded something that's sitting in our inbox. Like I have a folder that's called resources and it is full of stuff I've never read. And then I'll read something, an article, and I'll get the link and I'll chuck it in my Asana where I manage all my tasks. And I'm like, read document, and I'll put a date and it just gets pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until I delete the date off it and it sits in the bucket of stuff that will never get done because it doesn't have a date assigned. And so we've all been there. So then from there, we then take that and we build out sequences based on so this is the bit where we kind of start to plug in together, isn't it? Where you've built we've gathered the intel, you've built these incredible lead magnets, which blow my mind every time. The copy, the information, the ad, etc. And then from there, that's what I learn about and take on board and then create the email sequencing, which will go as a standard. And we either, depending on the business, we either do it on their behalf or we give it to them for them to execute. And that's then almost like the tag team bit, isn't it? Of like, here's the stuff, like over to you. And then once we've got it in that sequence, we do that email happens. That's all automated. So great, hands off at that stage. Then once they've gone through that sequence, it comes back to us. And then that's then when we'll call them. And we're using data that's either, or information, or the reason for our call is either you downloaded a thing, you came to a thing, I saw that you've seen this, just want to make sure it came through okay. And we're doing that warm up, which is what we taught in Clicks to Clients, of just setting up a sequence. And often the numbers in sales, and I don't know if you know stats of this, but the numbers in sales is that most people will attempt 1 to 2 times. And that is about 80% of people. And then it drops massively beyond that for how many further touch points they make. So my job, like the reason why we exist is that nobody else no one's doing this. Like nobody's going beyond the cool, they downloaded, they've had some emails. Now what? And then the only people that are doing anything at that stage is if they've hit this big number where they become like an on fire tag or a tag that's like super excited about. And they're like, cool, I'll do that. That one looks quite easy. But they don't do anything else underneath. So that's then where we come in to have those conversations. We feed back to you and say, oh, they wanted this, they like this was interesting. So marketing and sales get to come together and work cohesively, as they all should be. And then we then provide them the lead. So for us, we validate this, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with this, Jordan, like we validate the leads as being like those that we've captured through the database, through I've downloaded something. And then we bulk them up and we look at converting them into meetings or gathering more intel in that second stage. So it means that we care about leads generated, that's the focus. And then the sales bit is then the conversion of opportunity of download and gathered intel into, you did this thing, would it be worthwhile pursuing something further? Are you open to coming to this other event? We've got this happening. And then that way they both get reported. You have sexier data than we do because you're like clicks and percentage and price and this. And we're like, we spoke, we had a meaningful conversation, we gathered intel, we provided additional information, and then we converted to a meeting, or we've now got it sitting in our conversation pipeline ready for us to keep going.
Yeah. And I think what is really, I mean, one of the things I think when we first started working together, this part two, because I can tell you from a marketing perspective, what normally happens, because a lot of marketers run these campaigns without someone with a sales brain on the other side. And what normally happens is you run an amazing lead gen campaign and you get someone to download something and you get the email number one, which is, thanks so much for your download. Here it is. And then you get put into the newsletter list and that's it. And then all of a sudden you get weekly newsletters that you didn't ask for that have nothing to do with what you downloaded, and you unsubscribe because you're like, oh, why did you add me to the newsletter list? That's so annoying. And you unsubscribe. And so it's kind of, this great beast up front, but then you kind of let the lead go. And I even still HubSpot and all these like big players who should have really good sales systems in place as part two, I'll always download the yearly social trend report and things like that. And again, I get the email that's like, here you go, here it is. And then I just get some random newsletters. I don't even get like a call from HubSpot or anything. And I'm like, I am your ideal customer. Like, call me. I mean, I don't want them to call me.
I'm surprised because I get calls from them all the time.
But it is interesting to me, like just how much of the time that kind of like part two is kind of like, yep, job done. We got the lead, we sent them the document, and now they're in our newsletter list. So like, yay for us. We've got a nice newsletter list. I think that's probably the difference when I started working with you of being like, oh yeah, actually, you do need 3, 4, 5, 6 and a call and then a follow up, and not just, hey, did you download it? Hey, did you download it? Hey, don't remember, don't forget it's here if you want to download it, but like adding the value. I know you always talk about no touch point is too many if you keep adding value. See, I'm a great student.
Do you listen?
I do. But like all of that, I think that's kind of why it makes so much sense together, is because, yeah, you can do part one really, really amazingly. But if you don't have a strong part two, then, well, you can have all these leads and they're not going to do anything. And then on the flip side, you can have a really amazing part two, but if you don't have any way to bring the leads in, then you've got no one to follow up. So they go well together.
Yeah, definitely. And it is that hand in hand piece. And that's what I find, like, if I look at some of the other services we do as a standalone, when I work with businesses that have got a really good, I call it engine, marketing engine, our job is easier because we've got information and intel and clicks and all of that. And they can be technically cold, but if we've got that intel, that's our job as salespeople, to be able to turn that into a conversation. And like you said, you always need to have the two working hand in hand, because you can, like, the thing we'd say, and I think we would probably be able to argue on both sides, is like, well, I can convert sales if I just do marketing, and I can do sales if I don't have a marketing engine, but it's just harder. Like, it's just not as effective. And the piece I think I've always been very passionate about is that if you do have leads in your system and you're not picking up the phone, we're not engaging them to do the next thing. And so you'll probably get 10%. And I always use this average number, but you would get 10% of people that are like, right place, right time. And they've been on your email newsletter for long enough. They've seen something. And then all of a sudden, that one thing you sent, they're like, yes, I'm in. So you're going to get that. And obviously the more, if you're an e-commerce, you're going to be doing that. I'm talking about B2B, which is what you and I work on. That piece you have to generate it, because it's so noisy in our inbox, on our phones, on our LinkedIn messages. I mean, like I said, like yesterday, I think I said this on a podcast earlier, I had 5 messages yesterday, all stuff that I had to action. That's so noisy and that's so distracting if you're trying to do everything else. So if you don't have a siloed or a focused approach for either, it's going to be really challenging. And that's why I think I've really enjoyed that process, because I know the stuff that you generate is high quality. And the other thing as well is that it is probably just to highlight, it is an expensive exercise. Like running any kind of marketing or any kind of sales that's not where you're not doing it is going to be expensive because you're paying people that have got the expertise and the knowledge and the know-how. But also generating leads is expensive because if you can get someone that's after we talked about all the barriers to entry of getting someone to click on something, if you can, you're going to be more likely to have a good conversation with them if you do that than if you just go cold. And so what's the cost difference? Because it's a time difference as well as a reality of a conversion rate difference as well, that able to get them through. And that's where I think that for me is where it highlights the ROI on everything that we do and have done has been very specific, and clients have walked away extremely happy, but also they've stayed and then they've done more with us, or they've changed tack, or they've continued with the marketing, and then we've come in a bit later because we want to wait till we've got a few more hundred rather than doing 100. Or they've said, look, with that's working well, we'll work with the rest of our database. Let's go in and do some extra sales. So it's always about kind of pulling the right levers at the time that they need, depending on what the business is trying to achieve, isn't it?
Yeah. And, we always talk about it as an engine. Like if we do want it to become an engine that, I always talk about this like kind of tap that you can turn on and off. It's when you need more leads, great, you can spend more and you can bring more leads in and you can expand the team. If the team is overwhelmed and it's a great problem to have and everyone's too busy, then okay, maybe bring it back a little and let's not bring in too many new leads for a while. But I think like the other thing I think that is really nice about it being this kind of full engine is not just, yeah, sure, you can turn it on and off, but even though it is part 1 and 2 and that comes before the other, like they're always talking to each other as well. So, the lead magnet that is downloaded, that gives Harriet insight into, okay, like what are they interested in? What is the pain point that made them download something, have that conversation. And then Harriet has a conversation and is like, oh, well, they said they were actually really struggling with this. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'll make a new lead magnet that reflects that challenge because that might go really well. And all of that data is also going to the business and they can put that on their website. They can use it in socials. They can have it in their own conversations. So all you're doing is kind of just building this kind of like customer knowledge base of, okay, what are people struggling with? What can we talk to them about? What can we put in front of them to get their information? And so over time, like that engine should just be getting more and more efficient as well.
Yes. And then that then becomes more effective. If it's more efficient, it's more effective, the ROI is higher, and we've got an opportunity to continue growing that. And then they see the success on both sides and everybody wins. Like that's ultimately the goal, isn't it? And I think the real key difference with this offering of why I was excited to bring this to everyone's ears is because there's things here that we've shared that we've done that you could do yourself. Like this can absolutely be done internally. You could go and use you for running an ad campaign. They could do everything else that themselves. They could already have lead magnets. They could do everything themselves. But it's for organizations that have got the want and desire to grow and scale quite quickly within the conversations. And also I think we had one of our clients within this that was testing the market as well, where we've looked at it from kind of different angles. And I think we did the first 4 lead magnets and then I think you've then designed another 2 or 3. Is that right?
Yeah, another 2.
Yeah. So then that was then allowing us to help them test the market. So it's not we know this is 100% what our clients want to hear, but we're then on that journey with them. And although that's harder, to be able to showcase success, that's part of what we can do if organizations are trying to find their feet in the industry. And then because then, another episode we recorded was around niching, because then we've got such a variety between you and I, we've got so much experience that we can then advise on. And I think then that's it. So if you're, if there's organizations listening or people listening, this can absolutely be done themselves. Like you can absolutely go learn how to run a campaign, but take from this that it's collaborative. Think about what your ideal audience, your ideal clients want and need and would download, and be mindful of the transaction of data, because although they're not paying for it, they are technically paying for it. And if we were to put an amount on it, you said before $20 for a company name in addition to their name and email, add on a mobile number, add on something else. Why leads are expensive? Because we can get leads of people that we don't know that are engaged and care about this stuff, which will take longer, or we can go direct to the source and pay that money. And then maybe can you just share, just maybe as a part of our wrap up around, we've talked about this before, but around budgeting for leads? Because I think, whether it's with us or whether it's done, through somebody else or on their own, I think that's something that changed the way I think about ads. So maybe let's end there.
That's a recap of our favorite topic. Yeah, I think when you think about a cost per lead, what we often do is we go $50 a lead. That's crazy. Like that's so much money. If I'm going to have to spend $1,000 to get 20 leads, that is just absurd. That's so much money. But if I came to you and I was like, hey, I've got a customer for you that is ideal and they've already shown that they have the challenges that we can solve, and I'm happy to give that person to you to have a conversation. Would you give me $50 for that referral? I mean, absolutely you would. If you can then turn that lead into a paying customer, and some of the clients we work with, a paying customer could be worth $10, $20, $30,000 to them. If I said to you, I'll give you a qualified lead for $50 that you can turn into that customer, well, all of a sudden the ROI on that lead is huge. Now, a lot of that comes down to how much or how high your conversion rate is, right? But if you know, okay, out of every 10 people I speak to, I can convert one. So you may have spent $500 on leads. If that one lead is going to bring in $20,000 for your customer, that is a huge ROI. $500 you've turned into $20,000. So when you think about a cost per lead, try to take away this kind of idea of like, oh, it's $50 for a lead and assigning value to $50 and think about, okay, but what does that turn into? Like what would I be willing to pay if that lead is going to bring me X, Y, Z in value? And that is going to be different depending on the value of a customer to you. But I think that's always a very important thing to remember, is that it's not a cost per lead. It's okay, what is the potential return of that lead?
That's an awesome way of framing it. And the one of the questions you always ask is around like, if I could give you a lead that was worth this much, how much would you pay me? And I think that's also interesting on the others. Like if I think of people in the industry, across all offerings, like I've got partners in recruitment, and then I've got them in, obviously you and I work together from marketing. We've got then other people that will do different types of services for design and print, etc., and managing events. A lot of them, price point is relevant, because if your price point is lower, if it's you can only make $100, well then you're probably not going to want to do LinkedIn ads. Like, let's probably just highlight that. But we're not working with people that are selling $100 product. Or if it's volume you want, then it might be LinkedIn, and it might be a bit of Meta or a bit of something else. But I know that there's recruiters out there that will say to me, oh, if we win this, you get a standard $5,000 rebate. And I'm like, well, no, number one, I don't take rebates, because I prefer to just do it on my own, off my own back. And if I think that they're suitable, let's go. But if there was, like if I think of that way, well, okay, what's you're prepared to give me $5,000 for a qualified introduction. So therefore, if you were going to run ads, how many ads would you, or how many leads would you need to generate to achieve that amount of money you're prepared to pay somebody else? And I think then that's probably a good question to pose, or to finish on, is around thinking around how much you're prepared to spend. But if you are a business that's looking to scale and generate growth, and you don't have a sales or a marketer, consider a couple of things that I guess we've shared on this podcast. But obviously I'll put it in the show notes as well, if people want to reach out and find out more about what we're doing in this space for that demand generation of leads, turning them into then conversations and helping you build awareness in the market. We would love to chat to you. But for those that are not quite ready for it, think around how much you prepared to pay per lead, what is your conversion, and therefore that will work out how much you should be spending across your campaign. And never run a campaign that you do not do any follow-up with, even if it's just an email, just base level email. But then know that most emails are not being read. It's probably about 10% return. And if you pick up the phone, you will see a much higher return, or at least start gathering intel, which will help you build better campaigns and know what you need to talk about next. But thank you so much for being back on the podcast, Jordan. It was really interesting to, I guess, really go back through the service that we do day to day, because we've built it and it's been here, for a little while now. But I'm really excited to be on the journey with you. So thank you for coming and sharing a bit more.
Thank you for having me again. It was. I feel like it was a good reminder. I feel like we haven't actually talked it through for a while, so it was quite nice to talk through it. And hopefully we can help some more people and see the triple F full funnel formula keep going.